honey. You look happy. Are you happy?
Hey, it's Janelle. Welcome to a new vlog. So I will be doing a mood reading vlog today and telling you all about the books that I mood read. Before I start though, I just did want to mention my channel was recently monetized and I was uploading the last vlog you saw, World Food Books, and I selected restrict to over 18 and that this video contains sensitive content because of the subject matter of some of the books. And YouTube was like, nah bruh, we're not monetizing this shit. So I knew that YouTube has a lot of censorship with certain words because I've seen other booktubers say words like grape when they're talking about the word that doesn't start with the letter G. But now I am obviously very aware that there are words that I am going to have to circumvent if I want to be able to monetize my videos. So you will see me getting creative when describing the content of certain books, and that is why. So I am figuring it out as I go which words I can say, which words I can't say. But yeah, I think the biggest trouble I'm going to have is with a get real weird with a vlog. That's going to make me work this muscle. But as usual, I used a tarot deck to choose one of the books. So I've chosen Echoes Through Time, and the card that I got was the Queen of Swords. So the prompt for this card is choose a book that features royalty. I've got Sylvia on my lap at the moment and she's very much matching my grey aesthetic. So the book I chose for this particular prompt was Heir by Saba Tahir. So this is classified as a YA fantasy, high fantasy, romantasy. I feel like it's more new adult rather than YA. Because of the content and the fact that none of the main characters are under the age of 18. So yeah, I would say it's more new adult. So if you're a bit reticent towards reading YA as an adult, you would be fine with this. So in this book, you follow three characters. One is an orphan, one is an outcast, one is a prince. So the orphan is named Aze, and I will have to say that I hated her and really disliked her POV the most. Her story opens up with her trying to kill this evil prince by seducing him. Things don't go to plan, so to speak, and she ends up having to flee with the help of a deity that refers to herself as Mother Diz. So in their particular world, a lot of them have some magic powers. One of them is like airbending, so they control the wind. And she has a little bit of that power, but Mother Diz promises that if she goes and frees Mother Diz from her tomb, Mother Diz will give her power enough to overthrow this evil prince. So that's her quest. Then you have the outcast, which is Saoirse, and I loved her. She was by far my favorite character. Her POV was the one that I was most wanting to read. I didn't really care for the others. Hers was the best. So she's been shunned by her society, by her people. So I believe she was called a Jaduna or Yarduna. And she has magical powers in that she's like a tracker. She's like a hound dog. She can sense other magic and follow those magic users and kill them. So she speaks with the elements. The wind, earth, water, they all speak to her. So she's an assassin, so to speak. And she ends up taking a job to track down a murderer that is killing children. She ends up getting more than she bargained for in that deal. So I loved her. Then you have the Prince Quill, and his country has gone to war with another civilization. So this is a very political book. There's a lot of war in this book with the different factions. And some of the characters, they all end up colliding. They're all tied together in some way. I would say it's a darker themed fantasy. So like I said, it features killing of children. I wonder if I'm allowed to say that. I don't know. See if YouTube has any issues with that. I don't know. I'm not used to censoring my speech. But I will say with this particular novel, it took a lot to get into. In the first 100 pages or so, I felt like I was getting smacked in the face with 100 hot dogs of information. It was just like, blah, 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 and I could barely catch any of them, you know, and if it hadn't started kicking off, I think it was around the 110 page mark. So normally with fantasy, I give it 100 pages and then I DNF. But because this was a tarot prompt, I kept pushing. But yeah, it was at about the 111 page mark, I think, for me, where it started to get interesting finally. Like it eased off the info dumping, because obviously there is like a lot of world building and magic systems at play here, and you're getting all of the characters' backstories and all of the countries' histories and all the politics. So it's a lot. It's a lot. But I will say the story does get better. I still never really liked Ace, obviously, and Quill, God bless him, he's a lovable loaf of bread. Like, he doesn't really have much of a personality in this whatsoever. He's there to be the wounded love interest of one of the characters. Or is he? Or is he? Like, I won't give everything away. Obviously, a lot of this is stemming around, it's not class. I really needed to go gluten-free for a while so I can get rid of my brain fog. It's to do with the way money is dispersed within a society. Do you know what I mean? With like the rich having all the power and making all the choices, and the poor suffering because of those choices that are implemented. Class warfare, wage discrepancy, but it's not wages. You know what I mean? Wealth distribution. I got there in the end. It's a lot about that, but it's also looking at how much does the cause justify the actions. You know, like, it's like, okay, your cause might be noble, but at what price, at what sacrifice, at what cost? You know, so I enjoyed it. Oh, there's also, I guess, stuff to do with familial bonds and duties and responsibilities and tensions and dynamics. But yeah, it's a, you know, sort of typical high fantasy book it's got some romance. It's not closed door, but they're not really talking about bits and pieces. You know what I mean? Like, we're there, they're talking about, oh, you know, we're passionately embracing and kissing and hands are roaming, but it's not graphic at all. And I did like the romance. It was fine, but I wasn't heavily invested in the romance. This was more about the plot for me and Saoirse as a character. Like, love her. So the way it ends, it does end on a bit of a dun 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 moment. I am undecided if I'm going to continue on. I kind of just feel satisfied as is, but if I do, it would really just be for Saoirse. It would just be to find out, how does her story end? So we'll see how I feel when the time comes, when the sequel comes out. I'm not a huge series type of person, especially if the series isn't complete. If it's complete, I'll burn my way through it if I love it. If it's not complete, it depends how I feel at the time, because it depends also to how much I've remembered of the first book. I will not go and reread the first book. I'm not really much of a rereader. There are very few books that I will reread over and over. A lot of them are actually middle grade books, like Matilda, The Little Prince, The Phantom Tollbooth, because they just, they're very healing for my inner child, and they're very nostalgic, and they bring me a lot of childlike joy. So I tend to read those the most, and sometimes non-fiction books if they're about a certain topic I need a refresher on. So yeah, I very rarely reread, but we'll see when the time comes. At the moment, this one is a 4-star read for me, so I did really enjoy it. The next book I picked up was Toward Eternity by Anton Heir. So they were commonly a translator. If you recall, I read the book they translated, Magical Girl Retires, which I found odd and weird. It was a very Sailor Moon-esque odd book, but I thought I'd give this a go. So writing style, I did enjoy their writing style. This is a sort of a speculative fiction sci-fi. So this book centers around these different individuals, and it looks at them and their sort of legacies over the course of centuries, pretty much. You have a glimpse at what the blending of human and AI would look like. So in this world, they use nanotech, and they found a way to incorporate nanotech into human bodies to heal these people who had terminal cancer, and they're following the results of these experiments with these certain people. This book is very pensive. It's a deeply philosophizing kind of book. So I would say the plot line of these nanotech humans and the course the world takes with human versus AI is sort of in the background. It's mostly a vehicle to look at what makes someone human, the role of memory, the question of whether the soul and love are eternal, and what the role of language is in creation especially viewed through the lens of poetry. So this author is very fond of poetry, it seems, especially Christina Rossetti. So her works are featured predominantly in this one because one of the machines that is in here was programmed mostly around poetry, but not just knowing poetry. The machine was programmed to enjoy poetry, to find meaning and feeling in poetry, and then that machine is like loaded into a human body. And it was an interesting book. I'd say there's also a lot about grief in here. One of the characters had lost their husband, and it seems they were really unable to move on from that grief. The echoes and the ghosts of that love haunted them. I've given it a 3.5 stars. I did enjoy it. It's, like I said, it's more of a quieter, reflective thought book rather than action-based or a heavy character study. Like I said, I feel like the characters and the plot in this were just a scaffolding for the author to contemplate certain topics and ponderings. So yeah, despite its languidness and its thought heaviness, I still enjoyed it. 3.5 stars. In a way, it kind of also reminded me of Our Wives Under the Sea. So maybe if you like that, you might like this in a more sci-fi leaning sense. You do have to also, I guess, be interested in nanotech and human versus technology. Then I picked up Berserker Bloodlines Volume 1 by Keanu Reeves, Steve Scrose, Matson Tomlin, Rebecca Isaacs, Dave Stewart, and Dee Knief. So I picked up the book by Keanu Reeves and China Melville, The Book of Elsewhere, I think it was called. I'll put a picture up here. I DNF'd it. I could not push through, but the idea of the main character, this eternal being who cannot die and is basically just a warrior throughout the centuries, intrigued me. It's modeled on Keanu, so I'm going to show you some of the pictures. Basically, this is Keanu. So I loved the illustration style. Be warned, it's very violent and graphic. Hopefully I haven't just shown you like horrific scenes. I'll try and go through quickly, but I do like the illustration style and the color story. But bro, Keanu went full berserker in this. Like, it just rampaged. His thirst for violence is because of this, I guess, being in him. It feeds on violence, so he can only go so long being peaceful before needing to glut himself on destruction and blood. And in it, it's a lot violent and bloody and a little bit funny, a little bit sexy. There was some parts I did laugh out loud at the humor, the jokes. Like, there was a chick at the start of the book who is I guess Keanu's right-hand woman, and she's talking about her master, you know, how she kind of wants to bang him. Still, he won't lay with me. I don't get it either. I'm working on it. And she said this, I'll put it in the corner so you don't see too much blood and mayhem, while she's sitting there like eating snacks or watching him slay. So look, I found it funny. I found it entertaining. There is a story in there about war in civilizations and who he's fighting for. And it just, like I said, it gets real dark, and I won't even call him, at best you would call him chaotic neutral. At best, okay, like, I probably wouldn't, I wouldn't say he's a bad person, but yeah, I think this thirst for feeding and maybe his sense of betrayal is so heightened that he gets a bit into a frenzy mode and shows no remorse. I'll just say that. But yeah, I've given it a 4 stars. I found it entertaining. I don't feel the need to continue on with the series. I've had my fix. I've piqued my curiosity into the character of, his name was something with a U. Unute. So yeah, 4 stars. Then for a non-fiction read, I picked up Maximalism by Kristen Bateman. So look, when it comes to my personal home, I'm definitely more of a cozy minimalist because I can't be overly stimulated by my surroundings. My nervous system can't handle it. But I do have a great appreciation for maximalism. When I go to places that have all of this detail and extravagance, it's fun. It's like an Alice in Wonderland moment, I'm like, oh, look at all of the prettiness. What can I discover? what catches my eye, it's like, it's got this sense of whimsy to it. And so, yeah, I really appreciate maximalism. And if I was to build my dream home, which is always the dream, one day to build your own home, I would like some rooms that have touches of maximalism in them, you know, like some, I don't know, maybe a library or something, I don't know, but I really like it. And I thought this was really well done. So I got to learn some new things, which is always a good thing when you are reading nonfiction. So I learned that maximalism began in Italy during the Baroque period. And it's just so opulent, you know. It's like the Palace of Versailles is considered maximalist, and I think it's Baroque. And I love the Palace of Versailles. It's just so much to look at. It's like artwork. I'd have to say that one of my favorites periods in this is the Rococo. It's just so elegant and lush and just awe-inspiring. But they not only go through the periods, you know, there's Art Deco and Art Nouveau and all that in here, then they talk about certain designers who obviously must have had maximalism as their trademarks. We've got Sister Parish, Billy Baldwin. So I don't know any of these people, but it talks about them, and then it just shows you various places or iconic residences. And then at the end, towards the end, I'm like, look how cute this is. Like, seriously, gorgeous. So for instance, I love going to cafes that are maximalist. It's just a fun time. Or staying in hotels that are maximalist. But they tell you how to maybe achieve that at home as well, with the furnishings and the textiles and the prints and all that sort of thing. So I thought this was well done for what it is. It's like a 5-star non-fiction, but I had so much fun just looking at it all, and it gives me so many ideas. But am I ever going to use these ideas? I don't know. But maybe one day I will be incredibly financially successful, and then I'll get to let my imagination run wild. But I did enjoy this. And the last book I read for this reading vlog, I just wanted something that I knew would be like a hug for me. And when I saw that Kate DiCamillo released a new book called The Hotel Balzaar, illustrated by Julia Sarda, she wrote The Miraculous Journey of Edward Talane, which eviscerated me. It did absolutely gut me emotionally, but it wasn't my favorite read of that month. And so I thought, how could I pass this up? So I'll show you some illustrations. You've got beautiful end papers there. It's so lovely. Once again, I guess this is for middle graders, and yes, I definitely see how middle graders can absolutely read this, but as an adult, I also got a lot from it. So you have a young girl who lives in a hotel with her maid mother. They share a tiny attic room. Their father went missing a long time ago, and they're quite impoverished. And the mother always says to her, you have to be a little mouse. You cannot be seen, you cannot be heard, you cannot be noticed. But one day, a countess and her parrot come to the hotel, and she sees her. She notices her, and she says to the little girl, come to my room. I want to tell you some stories. And so she comes and she's telling her these tales. And at first, the little girl is like, what's the point of these stories? I don't understand what you're telling me. Can we just skip to the end so I can understand what the culmination of all these tales are? But the countess is patient and loving and kind, and she's like, no, the stories will be told as they are told, and eventually you will understand. And they all come together, and it's so beautiful, and it's so touching. It's just like a warm hug for your soul. I loved it. It wasn't as, like I said, it wasn't as brutal as Edward Talane. It was much lighter, and like I said, I would absolutely recommend this for middle graders. But it was just so touching and sweet, and it's a bittersweet tale. You know, it's not all sunshine and rainbows and happily ever after, but it's palatable for young readers. It's not going to traumatize them. And yeah, it made me smile, and it did what I wanted it to do. You know, it was like a hot cup of cocoa. I found a lot of comfort in it, and I loved the illustrations. I thought they were very sweet, and it was very easy to read, quick read, and it's a 5-star book for me. Great. So I'll quickly sum up again all the books that I read for this vlog. So we have Toward Eternity by Anton Hur, which I gave 3.5 stars. Berserker Bloodlines by Keanu Reeves, which I gave 4 stars. Heir by Saba Tahir, which I gave 4 stars. Maximalism by Kristen Bateman, which I gave 5 stars. It's not really a rating, but I enjoyed it. And my favorite read of this reading vlog, The Hotel Balzaar by Kate DiCamillo, which I gave 5 stars. So another great mood reading week. Pretty much whenever I mood read, I expect to not have anything under a 3 stars because I'm very stringent with my DNFing when I'm choosing books to read for my own enjoyment. And I've been pretty good at that. Been pretty good at, DNFing anything that felt low and not really ending up with anything under a 3. So that was everything for this reading vlog. Let me know what you read recently. And until next time, stay wild, Star Child.